Welcome into the CHGO White Sox podcast, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app today and use promo code CHGO when you sign up. Welcome in to Studio A of our CHGO offices here in the West Loop of Chicago. I'm Sean Anderson, the host of the CHGO White Sox podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean_W_Anderson. We have the full CHGO White Sox crew here today. We got Vinnie Duber on the far left. You can follow him on Twitter at Vinnie Duber. He's our CHGO White Sox beat writer. And the man in the middle is Herb Lawrence.
Hello.
You can follow him on Twitter at Ecknerwall23. He's our CHGO White Sox community leader. On today's show, we already got grades rolling in from Sean. We will be talking about some of the lack of manager interviews. I saw White Sox fans upset after a recent report came out today about the Miami interview process. So we'll talk a little bit about where the Sox sit with their interview process for their next manager. And then as Sean is giving his grades in the chat, D+ for Yoan Moncada. Will be giving out our report cards for Yoan Moncada's 2022 season and be talking a little bit about Yoan Moncada and his future with the White Sox. And you touched upon it with your piece, I think it was about a week ago, where you looked at the White Sox roster and you kind of looked at Yoan Moncada and Yasmani Grandal, and it seems like the White Sox will be stuck with them. So we'll grade Yoan Moncada's 2022 and look to 2023 to see if he can improve in any ways. But let's jump into what set White Sox Twitter off today. This one coming from Craig Mish. He is a host over at Sports Grid, and he is a beat writer, or he at least covers the Miami Marlins, and he does a fantastic job doing that. Sources from at Craig Mish. He said Astros bench coach Joe Espada and Rays bench coach Matt Quatraro will interview for the Miami's Marlins managerial job for a second time. And then just to go in a little bit further, he was asked if he had a preference for who got the job, and he said not particularly. They're doing a thorough job. So many interviews that were not reported. Interesting overall. And with the White Sox, we really have only heard.
I'm sorry, that is what made White Sox fans mad?
Well, yeah, that they had second interviews.
So what made White Sox fans mad was that the Marlins are also searching for a manager.
Basically,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The fact that they're two different jobs completely with two different owners, two different rosters, the fact that they are on their second round of interviews and it's being reported on means the White Sox are asleep at the wheel, are not doing their jobs, and are not taking this managerial search seriously.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're being very sarcastic in your tone, because that's an insane complaint to make.
I agree.
That some other team is also interviewing guys does not mean that the White Sox are not interviewing guys.
And also, if some team hires a guy first, doesn't mean the White Sox missed out on their guy or that the favorite wasn't hired by the White Sox. Phil Nevin just recently signed a contract. It's reported that
former Cubs great Phil Nevin.
It's reported that the Blue Jays are going to be signing John Schneider to a long-term deal on Friday.
And the Phillies already promoted their guy to full-time manager. Yeah.
And so really you're looking at the openings, and it's Kansas City in your division. It's Miami that hasn't been good in years. And then the other team is now I'm like Rangers, who, they've spent a lot of money, but how much do you love that roster? I mean, the White Sox are still the best job that are currently available managerial wise.
I would think so too. But yeah, I don't really get into who interviewed for a second time with other teams, because if you're looking out, yes, the White Sox have the most attractive job that is available right now. And so if Espada finds something interesting down there in Miami, or Quatraro finds something interesting in Miami, let him pull the trigger. Go ahead. Don't jump to this Espada guy or a Quatraro or other people unless you feel like the trigger needs to be pulled right now and you feel like that is the guy. 100%, we need to go and get our guy right now, as the Miami Marlins are interviewing for the second time. But I haven't heard of the wide net being cast out for all these guys. As Vinnie said, interview everybody. Interview every single manager that is qualified to take over this job, just in case you want some information from around the league and how you do. And also just seeing different personalities. Maybe eventually you'll hire that guy 2-3 years down the line, 4 or 5 years down the line, hopefully 20 years down the line, you hire somebody in that organization. But at least you've put that interview out there, and those people are like, hey, I saw what Jerry Kinney and Rick are talking about. Yes, they didn't hire me this time, but I love that organization. I would love to work for them because they did things in a professional manner. I don't really too much care that Cotaro and Espada interview for a second time because they see that Marlins thing and like, nah, I'm good. I'm real good. Let me go up to Chicago. Let me at least hit my second interview with Chicago. And then if they ain't talking about something real, I'll go down to Miami.
Well, I'll make 2 points. First of all, obviously this has always been in reference to player activity, but I'm sure it applies here too. Rick Hahn always says the White Sox do their best work when no one's talking about them, right? When all those reports aren't flooding the Twitter sphere talking about who's interested in who and who's talking to who and stuff like that. So I would imagine they are perfectly happy that there has been relatively little to talk about in terms of who they have been reported to have interviewed. And the second thing I'll say is just because you, the fan, or you, the Sean, think that Joe Espada is the runaway guy that should be the slam dunk hire for this team, doesn't mean that that's what the interview process has yielded for the White Sox. It also doesn't mean the opposite, and perhaps he will be introduced as the next White Sox manager within the coming weeks. But nobody knows what's going on behind closed doors right now. They might have been blown away by somebody or impressed by somebody or have several more people that they still want to talk to. We don't know what the process holds right now, and I think that's kind of the point. I understand that everybody's impatient, but just because there's no reports being made doesn't mean that there's no activity being done.
Absolutely, and that's why looking at Craig Mish, who's broken a lot of stories in that Miami organization, I just think that he's got a good touch on what's happening in kind of the managerial search as a whole. So like if one guy is a favorite in Miami, I think he knows that, the other guy's not a favorite in Chicago, right? So I think he's just got a good pulse on the major leagues in general. And the fact that not a lot of interviews have been reported for Miami, for Chicago, even for Kansas City.
Who have the Royals interviewed?
Right. That's the thing is the only names that we've heard are Pedro Grifol and Joe Espada. So it really seems like the two bench coaches are getting their agents to put out the name like, hey, I interviewed. Like that seems like the angle there. So I don't think that the White Sox aren't doing anything. And I do think that you need to be patient because they can't announce their next manager until the World Series is over. Like you can't make that announcement right until the World Series is wrapped up and finished. The Cubs got in trouble with that, with Joe Madden announcing before that happened. So you got to wait until the baseball's done playing before they even hire a manager, before this can even be announced. And you mentioned like working in the dark. Who expected Tony La Russa to be the next manager of the White Sox? Like that was reported, I think, 2 days by Bob Nightingale before the actual announcement was made. That was reported that 2 days before that he was the leader, and everyone was like, "When did he even become a candidate?" Yeah. He became, leader before he became a candidate. So I mean, yeah, I'm not too shocked that the White Sox don't have a lot of news flowing out here about who has been or hasn't been interviewed.
I mean, the only thing you would rush to is to hire a guy before another team hires him. But as I think managers are negligible for the most part, some could help you more than others, but don't be rushing out to hire a guy just because another team is looking to hire him. If he doesn't want to come here, if he has heard your offer and he has turned it down, no need to chase him because you're just chasing money now. Then you're just making his deal a little bit better for himself. So, yeah, you say you can't even get hired until the World Series. So what's the rush? There's no players in the clubhouse. There's nothing to establish as a manager. It's just for, I guess, the fans. Because what does a manager do in the offseason? Really? I mean, meet up with the players, talk to them real quick. His real job starts in February when they meet in camp. So I don't see the rush to go out and hire a bunch of people. I hope Rick, Kenny, and Jerry are jet setting everywhere and giving these interviews a fair shot and not being rushed by anything. And by the way it seems, it looks like everything is undercover. I mean, the Grifol and the Espada interviews are the only ones that I've heard that have been leaked out. And that's it. And so I hope they're just undercover looking for people that maybe are insular hires. Like I've heard Jim Thome, I've heard other names. Maybe just give them interviews. I don't want them to be hired, but give them interviews and make sure that you leave no stone left unturned. When this process is over, you got your guy and not rushing because other people are doing things in front of you.
And just to update that timeline, Bob first reported that Tony was a candidate on October 12th. He was hired on the 29th.
After the World Series.
Yeah.
The Silk Man, too, also broke that like 2 days before when everybody was like, Bob's garbage. And Dan Rowan's like, no, he's actually true.
Dan Rowan broke that?
Yeah, well, I mean, initially it was Bob Nightingale. And then Dan Rowan, like 2 days before, is like, yeah, the White Sox. I'm hearing the White Sox are hiring somebody, and it's the name you're thinking of. And everybody's like, no! It's like, I can't believe it. And if Dan Rowan goes on record back then, and, he's retired now, you had to take it exactly how it was meant, because Dan Roan doesn't do that at all.
Back then, way back 2 years ago.
2 years ago, the Silk Man working. Now he's just sitting on an island drinking some drinks.
Just to kind of whittle down or give you some sort of a idea of who has been confirmed or hasn't been confirmed, the two names that we can confirm, actually there's three names.
We can't confirm them. They've been reported.
There's three names that have been reported. One is confirmed. Pedro Grifol and Joe Espada have impressed White Sox officials in the interview process, sources say. So those two have been reported in Grifol and Espada. I would assume that we can just confirm that Miguel Cairo has been also interviewed as well.
Yes, that's a good point. So considering that Rick Hahn told us that he was going to.
So I wasn't taking too many jumps there. I'm not breaking a story here. Miguel Cairo also has been interviewed for the job. So those are the three guys that have definitely been interviewed for the White Sox position. Willie Harris said he has not heard from the White Sox. Joe Madden has said that he hasn't heard from a single MLB team yet. So those two we can cross off the list as being possible or potential guys just because they haven't been interviewed yet.
He might be eventually come.
Maybe, or maybe they're just keeping their lips sealed at this point. But Willie Harris went on Parkins and Spiegel and said that on the radio. So I would assume that Willie Harris isn't BSing us there. And then Bruce Levine also reported that Ozzie Guillen has not been ruled out as the next White Sox manager. He hasn't been interviewed, or there hasn't been a report saying that he has been interviewed, but I guess we can't officially cross out Ozzie just yet. And then the other one, Mark Feinsand of MLB.com said there's a buzz within the industry that Phillies hitting coach Kevin Long is emerging as a potential managerial candidate for at least one of the 5 openings: Royals, White Sox, Marlins, Blue Jays, and Rangers. Now we know Blue Jays have been likely signed up with John Schneider. So Royals, White Sox, Marlins, and Rangers. It's potential managerial candidate for at least one of the 5. So it's a potential that Kevin Long has interviewed for the White Sox. So really we can say that
it's a bit of a leap, I'd say.
We could say that 2 guys have for sure been sourced as White Sox interview candidates in Grifol and Espada. Outside of that, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And I think that's why, we keep talking about interview everybody, basically to make any wish list you want. I think that it's been pretty well relayed by Rick Hahn that it's probably not going to include, it probably doesn't need to include Ozzie Guillen, Jim Thome, Willie Harris, AJ Pierzynski, all those guys that a lot of people in the comments still keep saying that they want to see hired. That's probably not going to happen just because of the forcefulness with which Rick Hahn talked about that whole White Sox DNA thing back during his end-of-season press conference. But other than that, managerial experience, if you've got it, it sounds like you're qualified at the moment, at least through the criteria that Rick laid out. So we'll see if that obviously ends up being the case, whether they go with a manager or a bench coach or something like that. But yeah, right now it's all under wraps, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. They're just going about their business. I understand the impatience, and certainly we're going to have this same experience once we start talking about free agency and all that stuff, because we do every year when everybody is on a daily basis wondering why the White Sox aren't in rumors today kind of thing. It's just how this team and this situation seems to work.
Well, and funny, it kind of usually comes from some way or another Bob Nightingale's voice, even back to the 2020 managerial search, him having that first report about Tony La Russa and then him breaking the news that Tony would be the next guy. His top 3 guys that he named that could be the favorites for the White Sox in his notebook were Bruce Bochy, Mike Schilt, Ron Washington. Oof. So 3 of those guys have not been reported to interview with the White Sox. So those were the 3 favorites. I mean, do we make anything? Can we glean anything from that, of those being the 3 favorites? Can we assume that those guys will interview if they haven't yet at some point?
I mean, what's Ron Washington doing? His team has been eliminated, and I haven't heard anything about him being reached out by any team, but much less the White Sox. So I wouldn't mind them talking to Ron Washington if they have similar paths going forward. Yeah, bring him along, because I think he was really good in Texas. Now, some of the things off the field, I didn't like reading stuff about Ron Washington, alleged stuff that was happening. But if they can clear it up and they think that Ron Washington's a good leader, go for it. Bruce Bochy has had, as Ozzie says, he has a worse health than Tony La Russa. So I don't know why you bring him back. I think it's just the same manager you're bringing back for the most part. You said, what is his last championship, in 14, and Tony was 11. 3 years before that. Mm-hmm. So, what does he know about today's game, which has changed dramatically? We can see with this wild card round has changed dramatically. We're going to have shifts banned next year. All the things that, an older school manager probably wouldn't, probably would like, but also the game has changed so much. So I wouldn't necessarily like Bruce Bochy as my next manager, but, interview him. See if he does have some type of vision that you, as the White Sox, think that would be a message would be well received, because the people in San Diego talk about him like a god, and the people also in San Francisco do the same. So something he does translate well, and he has worked with the San Francisco people who have been progressive for the longest of times. So maybe if you do bring Bruce Bochy in, you get the best performance out of the guys who were out there in the clubhouse. But I would go more towards a younger, more analytically based guy, because I think this team needs to change. And if that person brings that to the table with more staff, I think the White Sox can become better.
Well, and just to bring this up, Ken Rosenthal did on Bruce Bochy say that he met with Rangers GM Chris Young, mainly because he used to coach Chris Young. Sources tell The Athletic Rangers are in the process of hiring a manager, and then Evan Grant confirmed the report from Ken Rosenthal that Chris Young and Bruce Bochy met, but they didn't know if it qualified as an interview or a feeling out process. So is Bruce Bochy even interested? Makes sense that he would at least take something with Chris Young, just because they have that former player-coach interview or player-coach connection.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Bochy's name obviously was being talked about the last time the White Sox had a managerial vacancy, and obviously the big difference between him and LaRusso was, I believe, his tenure with the Giants ended in 2019, only 3 years ago, as opposed to Tony being 9 years removed from the last time that he was in the dugout. So there is a little bit of a difference there, maybe a little bit more up to date on as Rick put it, the way the game has evolved over the last 10 years. But that being said, you're right. Obviously, you're talking about a guy whose best days might be behind him. A guy that won 3 World Series but did it, almost a decade ago at this point. So we'll see how that plays out. Who knows? Like you said, if he's even interested in coming back, it seems like if it were me, I would be happy with the 25-year career and maybe just chilling for a little bit. But obviously, as we saw with Tony, these guys have trouble moving on sometimes to a different kind of lifestyle.
I always get that itch. That itch always comes back. And Eddie Estrada said, just tuned in. Anything above a D grade for him is just wrong. He was useless at the plate, just like Yasmani.
Wow, so mean to Bruce Bochy.
Don't worry, Eddie Estrada. Our report cards for Yoan Moncada are coming up right after this ad break, but we got to let you know about Shady Raids. They never understood why sunglasses were so expensive, so they set out to change it. You don't have to break the bank for quality sunglasses this fall, because our friends at Shady Rays have got you covered. Shady Rays are premium polarized shades featuring world-class optical clarity, substantial durability, and styles catered to everyone and every lifestyle. And because they cater to every lifestyle, and even though they are substantially durable, the one thing is they have a great protection program. They still manage to make quality that I can tell you when I hold the sunglasses in my hands, you could just tell that they were made very, very well, just as well as an expensive pair was made. That's why they have over 2,000 5-star reviews. But if you lose or break your shades on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. If you dropped it off a lake, if you dropped it off a cliff, if you sat on them, if you ran them over with your car.
These are all things you've done, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think I haven't run them over with my car, but I've gotten close at some point in my life. And if I did that on the first day, they would replace them, no questions asked. And again, even though they are durable, made very durable, they're going to replace them and take that profit loss for you, because that's the type of company they are. They've also donated 10 million meals to fight hunger in America with every order placed, and have donated over 20 million meals to date. So not only can you help their great philanthropical model.
Philanthropic is the word you're looking for.
Philanthropic, thank you. They're philanthropic efforts. Thank you. You could also support their well-made
pass it over here.
Sunglasses. And also, you can exclusively for our listeners, you can get a part of their deepest deal yet. Use code CHGO for 50% off. 2 or more pairs at ShadyRays.com. Buy one, get one free, and you can get 2 pairs for as low as $54. Redeem only at ShadyRays.com, where you can find all their newest and best shades. Again, use code CHGO for 50% off 2 or more pairs at ShadyRays.com. It's buy one, get one free. You can get 2 pairs for as low as $54 at ShadyRays.com. And our next partner is Game Time, and thankfully Herb has used this app, so he can also talk about it.
I can.
Game Time's the hottest new ticketing site that makes it easier than ever to score the best deals on tickets to sports, concerts, and shows. Herb, you got the guaranteed lowest price when you went out to Atlanta, but even when we went to 2 games at the G rate, we got great deals. The biggest last-minute price drops can be found on the seats you never thought you could buy, and I never thought we could get deals for the outfield seats and club-level seats we got.
Exactly, and I was thinking that
He's got the Game Time app.
Like, I've been doing Game Time for years now, before this show even started. So, yes, I know about the last-minute things. You'll be at guaranteed rate waiting after the first inning, and some seats that you didn't get earlier because they were way overpriced drop down. I usually wait until the first or second inning's over and then make the decision if I want to go or not. But this time I went to Atlanta before the game. I hit that link in the description right here in the YouTube video. If you're watching on the podcast, the link is in the description too below this. So you click on that. I got the lowest ticket price at the time. And then like an hour later, there was a lower ticket price on some other site. I went to Game Time, sent them an email, did the screenshot. They sent me the difference, 110% guaranteed. So they gave me $46 in my credit, and I used it to buy some tickets for us to go to the White Sox game.
Yes, you did, because you're a sweet person, and it was created by the fans for the fans. They guarantee the lowest price. If you're looking to go to the Bears game, Vinny's got the Bulls hats on, so the 1-0 Bulls, you can go visit them at the United Center. Undefeated. So they guarantee the lowest price, and it was created by the fans for the fans, so that's why they want to give you the lowest price. If you love CHGO, then you'll love Game Time. The best way to support us is by buying your tickets through the link in the description, like Herb said, and you can join over 15 million people, like Vinny has, who have downloaded the Game Time app and scored the best seats to all of your favorite events. Real quick, Black Dank, BLK Dank 1 said, Yaz has been worse. We could have kept McCann. I just love being petty. James McCann, in his 2 years in New York, has hit 13 home runs. Yasmani Grandal, in 2020 alone, hit 23. So we can just
2021.
In 2021. In 2021, he hit 23. So Yasmani Grandal, in the season after James McCann left, hit more home runs than James McCann has hit in his Mets career by double digits. So we can stop having that discussion. It's a 2-year-old discussion. James McCann is in Queens, and let him be there. Let's talk about Yoan Moncada, though. We already got grades ranging from C+ to immediately change to a D to a lot of Fs here. Yoan is a player that's, I think, very interesting. I was thinking about this today, and he's one of the players who've gotten an extension. Luis Robert has gotten an extension. Tim Anderson's gotten an extension. Eloy Jimenez has gotten an extension. Yoan also
Aaron
got an
Bummer
extension.
has gotten an extension.
Aaron Bummer has gotten an extension. Lance Lynn's gotten an extension. But Yoan Moncada, right before the pandemic really broke out, right as spring training was started, before everything got shut down, they announced a 5-year, $70 million contract extension for Yoan Moncada, and that was after his fantastic 2019 season. But then he's arguably had, 3 of his worst seasons in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And I just look at the extension. He's going to make $17 million in 2023. In 2024, he's going to make $24 million. And there's a club option for 2025 for $25 million. I wonder if he is the most important player that they have signed to an extension, or at least the player that they need to have the most return on, just because you look at the deals for Eloy and Luis Robert, fairly team-friendly, where Yoan Moncada, it's probably tough to get out from underneath that contract. It seemed like you wrote about it a little bit, over the past couple of weeks, with him and Yasmani Grandal kind of being in these spots where, these positions are pretty set for the White Sox just with the money that they've spent there. Yeah,
and certainly if you're talking about time, right? I mean, his raises kick in sooner than those other two guys. Those other two guys have time to earn that money, so to speak. They're getting it, whether you think they earned it or not. They're getting it. But Moncada obviously has less time to turn things around. That being said, Herb, I know you would agree. I think he had a very nice 2021 season.
Yes.
And should he be able to replicate even that, I think, you're talking about getting your money's worth to an extent out of the guy. I don't think you need to necessarily have, one home run for every $1 million you paid somebody. But, it obviously has been very disappointing, not just for fans to watch Yoan Moncada do this, but for Yoan Moncada himself, who obviously holds himself to a high standard. You could tell his frustration in talking to us, even as this season went on, not really wanting to hear about how bad he was doing at the plate, because he knows. This is a guy who has just been bedeviled by injuries. Certainly what happened to him in 2020 was, you heard about it all on the news. People who were dealing with the effects of COVID-19 for months and months after they quote unquote got over it. Yoan Moncada was in that group, and somebody whose job required him to not be fatigued, whose job required him to be able to be physically on top of his game. He wasn't, and it was an awful experience for him. I think everybody will remember him racing around the bases in Cleveland, sitting down in the dugout and watching Rick Renneria fan him off with a towel because it looked like he was about to pass out on the dugout. And we chuckle about it because it was a memorable image, but it was probably a guy who was going through some real tough stuff physically. Obviously, that is in the past. But in 2021, he talked about being bothered by injuries, the nagging baseball kind of injuries all year long, and just playing through them because there was no Eloy Jimenez, there was no Luis Robert, there was no Nick Madrigal. The White Sox needed some players, and he needed to go out every single day like his mentor, Jose Abreu, and just play through it. He had to do it because the White Sox needed him to do it, and he talked about it as much. I suspect, though we didn't necessarily hear it from him as often in 2022 as we did in 2021, I suspect 2022 was much the same. Obviously, he went on the injured list a couple of times for various things, including the thing that kept him out for a good chunk at the very beginning of the season. He went on the IL, I believe it was the day before opening day, with an oblique injury that you could tell was bugging him throughout Cactus League play. I would suspect that this year was not a healthy year for Yoan Moncada, and he went out there basically when he could and posted. I think people need to know that when they think about the body language or the perceived, I'll say the perceived attitude that people think they see when they watch him play. And trust me, it's noticeable. You know what I mean? We see in the press box the same thing you're seeing through the TV screen, but it obviously doesn't. It's not necessarily reflective of what's going on in here. What I will say is that Yoan Moncada better have a healthy season soon because the White Sox need him to. And he needs to for his career. Obviously, you mentioned the money he's going to be getting. He's gotten that already, obviously, but the White Sox need him to be, if not 2019 Yoan Moncada, they need him to be 2021 Yoan Moncada. And this year was just... it was miserable for him offensively. Nobody's going to argue that. But they need him to be a lot better. They need a lot of people to be a lot better. But Moncada is the kind of guy who can help power a lineup, as Rick Hahn talked about right before the trade deadline. When the White Sox are going, it's because of Yoan Moncada. It's because of Yasmani Grandal. They're not necessarily two guys you can yank out of there and expect an overall improvement from this team. So, yeah, I think because of the season that he just had and the raises he's about to get, I think it's probably going to be pretty hard to trade Yoan Moncada this winter, and basically they need to cross their fingers and hope that a guy who has shown that he can do this and he can be that guy shows up again in 2023.
Well, excluding the option years, Yoan Moncada in 2023 and 2024 will make $41 million. Luis Robert over the next 3 years before his options pick up, and over Eloy Jimenez's next 2 years, they're going to make, so over the next 5 years of those players, they're going to make $50 million.
Combined.
A $9 million difference between the next 5 years between Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez and Yoan Moncada's next 2 years. So I do worry about that. And you talk about the health as well. In 2019, that great season, 132 games played. In 2020, even though he was dealing with COVID, 52 games played. In 2021, 144, pushing through it, like you said, and then 104 this year in 2022.
Yeah, and 2021, people laugh when I say this. He was a top 7 F4 third baseman in the league.
War.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is it good for? And so 2021, people are like, oh, Yoan's a bust. He's this, that, and the other. He was one of the best third basemen in the game. And so I was expecting ascension, a next move, up the ladder, getting over COVID in 2020, the lasting effects of a 2021. And like you said, he posted. Playing 144 games at third base is phenomenal. And he wasn't 100% healthy, but he's still putting up numbers last year. This year, that's why this year was just so disappointing, because of how it just fell off the table. He only had a .9 WAR this year, where he had a 4 last year, and he only played 104 games. Being hurt cost you all those games right there, and I'm sure the oblique didn't fully heal when he came back. It had to take some time for him to just get through it, because we saw the hitter he was in the first half. It was atrocious. But the only good thing offensively I'll give to Yoan Moncada, runners in scoring position, the man came through time and time again. And so I got to give him credit for that. But overall, I think, yes, he is the most important White Sox moving forward because of that number. He will not be moved. He will be on this team. You could say Eloy or Robert might be moved because their numbers are nice and friendly. The money there is not a lot. You can get a lot for them coming back. If you trade Yoan Moncada, you're not going to get a lot back because you have a big-time salary on him, and he didn't play well this past year. So switching from shifts where they're all on the right side versus Yoan Moncada when he's batting left-handed might help him in 2023. Just getting out of his own head might help him. And I think he suffers from what I like to call Alex Rios disease, where people look at him and his cool, smooth demeanor and his cool, smooth strides and like, he's loafing. Oh, he doesn't care. That's just the guy he is, I think, sometimes. I think that Yoan, there is no on and off button, and it looks like lackadaisical. Sometimes lack of focus caused him to drop balls that are thrown to him from the outfield, but I do not think that Yoan Moncada, for the most part, loafed it. It just, people just found something and like, hey, he's doing this, that, and the other. I'm going to get on him because he's not hitting this year. I don't like Yoan Moncada. I mean, last year, people were talking about Yoan Moncada not hitting home runs. Sometimes fans just have their punching bag. And since Yoan didn't play well this year, people are just going to keep on punching him and say, he sucks. He's a bust. We lost that trade to Boston. I think Yoan Moncada can be a top 5 third baseman. We've seen the defense. That's par excellence. And we've seen the offense. Now, putting that together into a cohesive full game in 2023, I think he can do that. That's why I'm not too worried about Yoan Moncada, and the money he'll make next year I think will be a bargain, a discount, because last year, even with the only 144 games and being hurt, I think his value was like a $33 million player because he played such good third base and his offense was awesome.
Yeah, we need to hear Herb speak French more often, by the way. That was lovely.
What'd I say?
You said par excellence.
Hors d'oeuvres.
Now, Horse Day overs.
Funny enough, I like your Alex Rios disease comp. I thought that was pretty good. And just thinking of that too, like there is no on-off switch, and I think that's why like you saw the 2 5-hit games from him this year. And it's just like I think that player's in there, and if he's going up against lackadaisical or worse competition like Detroit and Oakland, I think he could turn it on just because that on switch is always on. If you look at 2022, the most players with the most 5-hit games, Yoan Moncada was the only one that had 2 hits or 2 games with 5+ hits. Like it was weird to see a player that was so dominant in so many games like that. And even when he came off the IL, and I think of the Yankee series where they're down, and I think it was he either hit the home run to tie it or give him a 1-run lead, and they ended up losing that game like 15-8. But he put them up ahead, I think 8-7. And Loizaga comes in, throws him a fastball right down the middle, and Yoan Moncada just blasts it to center field at the G rate. And it's just like, and I think he had 2 home runs right when he came back off the IL. So it's like, oh, this guy's back. And it's just weird that he never found that consistency this year. And I'm not sure if it was injuries. I'm not sure if it's like COVID still. Like over the past 3 seasons, I think there's been so many excuses that I just wonder if this is who he is. And maybe 2019 was the outlier, and maybe they just paid for the outlier instead of paying for who he actually was. And that's no fault to the White Sox, who wouldn't sign a 24-year-old third baseman who had the season that you talked about. Yeah. And then also, like, he's still a switch hitter. Like, I mean, there's still so many things that are positives about him. Like, he's still a great defender. Like, I think they just might have paid at the wrong time, and that injuries have just kind of whittled down this fantastic athlete. I think it just might be a sad story.
And I think that, Yoan, I think he takes that stuff personally. Like, he seems affected by what people think of him, and so he takes that onto the field. I think that Yoan Moncada, when he signed that deal in 2020, I thought the White Sox were getting a steal. 5 years, $70 million for that guy, for the guy that just showed up in 2019. Man, why did Yoan sign that deal? Why would somebody, take up a couple of his ARB years and then a free agent year away from yourself just to get some security? He already had a big-ass contract when he came over from Cuba, so he really didn't need the extra money that the White Sox gave him, but it's always good to take. I thought that he would find himself going to free agency and let other teams bid over his services, but at the time, I was like, that's a deal and a half by White Sox. Good job, Rick Hahn, doing that. I still think Yoan Moncada will make that deal seem like a bargain after all. I'm a fan of Yoan Moncada, so maybe I'm biased because I know the great players inside there, and I'm just waiting for it to break out. And so next year, I believe, with all the changes that are happening, with a new hitting coach maybe, with somebody else in his ear, and knowing that this is the year he needs to move, because if not, the White Sox are going to look to move him the year after that, because they cannot have the production he had at third base again in 2023 and keep him into 2024. I believe that he'll break out in 2023.
Well, and one thing, too, Alex said he did find it, though. Look at his September numbers. He had a weighted runs created plus of 109 and an OPS of 750. I don't really know if he found it. He did have that one outlier where he had 5 hits against Oakland, too. So if you take out that game, he might be down to like truly a 100 weighted runs created plus for September. Let's get into some of the numbers. First, let's go into the report card for 2022. For offense, we gave Yoan Moncada an F. Yoan Moncada was very, very poor at the plate this year. Didn't really work out for Yo. OPS plus of 76 for Yoan Moncada. He slashed 212, 273, and slugged 353. Someone did ask earlier, Samuel Martin, if his salary does come into these grades. It does not. We were just basing this strictly off of, I think expectations, but also, he had 212. He was below average this year, so an F was an easy grade.
Below average.
Yeah, an F was an easy grade for his offense.
I mean, for the majority. I mean, for the majority of the season, he was struggling to get above 200.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, those 2 5-hit games, you might take him out and he might be under 200. But yeah, it was a struggle there to get above the Mendoza line. Defense, we gave Yoan Moncada, I think it ended up being a C+. And, it's nothing that, like, Yoan Moncada wasn't awful this year. He wasn't top 10, though, in outs above average for third baseman. You look career-wise, this was his second best season at 4 outs above average. Last year in 2021, he was at 0 outs above average. So, I mean, I guess he was better than he was last year, which is good, but his best year was 2019, where he had 6 outs above average. I would just say the fact that he's not a top 10 defensive third baseman, like, I think he's a good defensive third baseman. I just think this year it wasn't his best. I think his probably top ceiling for defensive season is probably around a B+ to an A-. But I just don't think that he had all of that this year.
I think that's low.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty low. I think he's a really good defensive third baseman. I think there are probably more than 10 really good defensive third basemen in baseball. He's one of them.
I think so too. Like, the eye test doesn't equate to a C+. I would say B+ at minimum for me. Just all the balls he gets to, all the plays that he can make with his arm, with his smooth style, and just his range. I mean, the peripherals show different, and there's better third basemen out there. But as far as a third baseman for the White Sox, I mean, he's one of the best I've seen since Joe Creedy. I tell you what.
Mercy.
He's going to be a monster. Yeah. But I think too that, obviously we've talked about it. We're not trying, or we shouldn't be, comparing these guys to their teammates, who obviously a lot of them had tough seasons. But for a team that is looking to improve, or should be looking to improve their defense this offseason, where you don't need to improve your defense? Third base. Nope. The White Sox have a lot of areas on the field with subpar defenders. Yoan Moncada is the best defensive player on this team.
Well, and just give you credit there, Herb, too. Even on the range factor, he's third among all third basemen on range. Nolan Arenado first. No shocker. 12.6. Jose Ramirez second. Kind of no shocker there at 9.2. Yoan Moncada 6.1. Matt Chapman, who is usually heralded for his defense, at a 2.6. So maybe I was a little bit low too. Also, when you look at errors, 5 errors for Yoan Moncada this year. 16 in 2021. He had 6 in 2020. And then in 2019 he had 15. And in 2018 he had 21. So I mean, definitely probably become more reliable. So that's on me. I'll take that one. What do we think is fair?
I think
I would say, just because where he usually is, I would expect him to be around a B+ to an A-. I would say this is probably at least a B-.
I say minimum B, but I would call him a B+ defender at third base. He's just so silky smooth, and when a ball's hit over there, I never really worried. The only thing I worried about, sometimes Yo would have, and it's very few and far between, the underhand throw would be a short hop to Jose, and so he would have more time than he thought he would have, and he needed to set up and have his feet a little bit better set, and sometimes he would just underhand the throw and the ball would be erratic, and Jose would save him from a big error. But I think that for the most part, I did not worry at all when Yoan Moncada was out there at third base.
Yeah, I mean, B plus, A minus. I think you're right in that area. I mean, I probably would trend toward higher. You know what I mean? I'd probably trend toward A plus or A. As Steven is just doing a wonderful job with these technical difficulties. There we go, fantastic. But
we're back.
And we're back. Yeah, I mean, he's an A defender in my mind in terms of, you know, you look around the diamond, you know who you do not need to go out and find a better defensive player in a position. That's Yoan Moncada. He's got defense taken care of. That being said, he was just as bad offensively as he was good defensively this past season.
I mean, is that just because Jake Berger was his replacement, though? I mean, we look at I mean,
you're saying when we are doing this to juxtapose how bad he was?
Does he just look that good because of how bad Jake Berger was?
I've always thought that Yoan Moncada, no matter what, looked great. Like even when they had, Danny Mendick sit in there or Lurie Garcia, who's himself a decent fielder. I just think Yoan is a different level. He's a different guy out there. He's not Arenado. He's not Machado. He's not Chapman or Riley. I think he is in that ilk, though. He's right below those people who can glove it. As you think of a third baseman at the position, he's like right below in that second tier of guys.
Yeah, so, not being Matt Chapman, not being Brooks Robinson doesn't make you mediocre. It just makes you not the best.
Yeah,
and he can still be really, really good even if he's not the best.
Yeah, well, and then real quick, Alex was saying he finished 8th in defensive run saves of all third basemen that were qualified. But if you take off the qualifier, he's at 27th for defensive run saves. So I don't really know what to make of this. I think he can be better.
Also, though, those defensive stats, you can't worship those defensive stats because was it 2020 or 2019 where Jose Abreu was he was the best first baseman in baseball defensive run save and last in outs above average. Like it didn't make any sense, or like last in defensive WAR or something like that. Like literally one of them had him as the best and one of them had him as the worst.
I remember it was 2020. He was one of the best in defensive run saved for a long time because the year before he was one of the worst. And then, he worked on his defense. That's half the reason why he won the MVP. But, I mean, Sean, you can disagree. This is not,
No, I know.
You don't have to come to a consensus. But if you believe that if you hold him to a higher standard as a defender, definitely you can say that he should be better than he is.
No, I mean, Vinnie is right that defensive, advanced numbers they're definitely the trickiest ones just because pitching and batting has been pretty streamlined. You do look at all the different outlets, and you either look at StatCast or Fangraphs or even Baseball Reference. They all measure it differently. So I think it is tough. I think the big thing that I think makes me walk it back is the fact that he just committed less errors, especially compared to 2020. 6 errors. He had 5 this year playing 50 more games. When he played 144 last year, he had nearly 15, only 5 this year. So it did seem like the throws were more accurate. I know he did. There was a couple plays that people were bitching about throughout the season.
I mean, he made some bad plays, no doubt about it.
That one that where the balls kind of trickling in, and Vinnie has spoke about this many times. Balls that have been thrown in from the outfield and past the cutoff man, and then trickling past Yoan, and then trickling past Johnny Cueto, and hitting that one sign in the dugout, getting a run scoring. So people looked at Yoan Moncada, said he should have more effort for that because he was trying to grab the ball and swipe tag the guy who was running to third. But there's been few and far between where he really messed up defensively, but those were glaring instances, and then people no, Yoan sucks. His lack of effort is killing the White Sox, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, Johnny Cueto was there. No one's talking about Johnny Cueto backing up there, not backing up correctly, but no, they like Johnny Cueto. So there was no fire for Johnny Cueto. It was only for Yoan Moncada because he messed up.
Right. We're spending a lot of time on Yoan's defense. Yoan's defense is not Yoan's problem.
That's true. Well, let's tell you about Pins and Aces, and we'll get to the actual problem of Yoan Moncada's game. Pins and Aces is the official golf apparel partner of CHGO. We love our Pins and Aces gear, and our guy Steven, when he's hitting the links, he's getting tons of compliments on and off the course. They're a family-owned golf and apparel business. They make amazing polos, hats, golf bags, and even our favorite beer sleeve. I don't hit the links too often, but I can use a beer sleeve. Who couldn't? It's an innovative product that allows you to store 7 beers right inside your golf bag and keep drinks cold the entire round. So check out pinsandaces.com and use code CHGO to receive 15% off your first order and get free shipping. That's pinsandaces.com. So if you're looking this holiday season for the golf fanatic in your life, we do really push you to go to pinsandaces.com and check out the selection again of all of their great golf clothes that they have and all of their products that they have, including that beer sleeve.
I would love to get the beer sleeve for mini golf. I think that would be fun.
It sounds like, hey, Casey, that sounds like something that Vinnie, Herb, and I are going to do in the middle of winter.
Casey, we're going to get a beer. We're going to get a beer sleeve. We're going to go play mini golf. So that sounds like some good social content.
From Pins and Aces.
There you go. And we're gonna go in the middle of winter.
No, don't.
Check out pinsandaces.com and use code CHGO to get 50%.
This is a May activity.
We're gonna go to Phoenix for this.
Oh,
that works.
Check out pinsandaces.com and use code CHGO to get 15% off your first order and get free shipping. That's pinsandaces.com. Also, too, if you're mini golfing, this would work. I mean, it's golf apparel. I mean, it's just miniature. Like the clothes,
so you have to wear it's way too tight. I have to wear. Yeah, I have to wear a crop top.
It's a crop top. Yeah, it's the Ezekiel Elliott mini golf course. And then we also got to let you know about our brand new, fantastic partners over at DraftKings. They are now the official sports betting partner of CHGO. NBA fans, the wait is over. Vinny, you're the biggest Bulls fan I know.
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum.
Basketball's back, so tip off the season with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can make any $5 NBA moneyline bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. If you rode the Bulls last night, you would have. If you placed a $5 moneyline bet, you would have gotten $200 in free bets, so don't wait any longer. Check this out as well. In addition to their usual bets, in addition to that offer of any $5 NBA moneyline bet hitting and getting $200 in free bets, you can also, everyone can, boost their winnings up to 100% with DraftKings stepped-up games, same-game parlays. So go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in and place a stepped-up same-game parlay today. They have this for NBA. They have this for hockey. They have this for football. So even if you're watching Thursday Night Football tonight, make sure to join in the fun. With bigger payouts than ever, DraftKings Sportsbook is where I go to place a bet on the NBA, NFL, and NHL. Tonight, I have a same-game parlay for Thursday Night Football. I'm taking the Saints plus 3.5. I'm taking Taysom Hill to score a touchdown and Kyler Murray to throw an interception. That's a $5 free bet that I got with DraftKings to win $25. So download the DraftKings Sports app today and use the promo code CHGO and make any $5 bet this week and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with promo code CHGO. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
I actually played last night. I played the Ayo Dosunmu points, rebounds, and assists. It was at 16.5. He almost cashed that in the first half. The man had his first basket in the second half, cashed that
I bet money on that too, Herb.
Yeah.
I live bet it, actually. DraftKings gave a 33% profit boost. I live bet it at halftime. It was over 25.5, which also hit easily.
Yeah,
there you go.
And they have so many markets. I love DraftKings.
Well, and that was the one thing, too. I had a parlay with IO over 8.5 points, and I just felt stupid because the other two legs didn't hit. I should have just rode with you guys and did the smart thing and just rode with our CHGO guy and IO Dosunmu. But let's get back to...
Also, you had no faith in the Woolly Bullies.
No. Period.
Yeah, you're all wrong.
They didn't win against the Heat last year. I didn't think they were going to win this year.
They're better.
They haven't lost a game this year.
Oh, boy.
Jimmy Butler cut his long dreads, and now he's a bum.
If you people...
I said that for Steven.
He had a good game.
How much of a Bulls fan meathead are you? You seem pretty... I didn't know you were a huge Bulls guy.
I definitely watched at least 3 or 4 Bulls games last year.
There you go. All right. Okay.
This year, I've watched all of them this year.
There you go. And you've worn the hat
every single one of them
in 2 straight days. So I've just assumed.
I thought we were just celebrating Victory Thursday. That's all.
Let's go into our report card back for Yoan Moncada in 2022. Just because we do need to talk about the offense. So the offense was an F. Defense was a C+. Overall, a D-. If you want to make that a D and bump up his defense, feel free. But I think the offense is clearly the most important thing that we're going to be harping on this discussion. And this was from 2022. So, Steven, do we have the report card from 2019? So this is Yoan Moncada's 2019 report card. Offense, A-, defense, B+. Again, 6 outs above average. If you want to give him a B- or a B+ for this year, and an A- for 2019. That's fine. Overall, an A-, and that's why he ended up getting that huge contract extension. But let's get into some of the numbers here. So Yoan Moncada's pre-extension versus post-extension. If we want to look at, this is the first one I want to go to. On the left, if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe to our fantastic YouTube channel. But on the left, you'll see his 2019 numbers, and on the right, you'll see his 2020 to 2022 numbers. And the main thing I want to point out here is the O swing, which is how many times the player is swinging outside of the zone. It's basically gotten better, 32.7% to 28.8%. His chase rate has gone down. His swing percentage has gone down from 47.3% to 44.1%. So he's being a little bit more selective. His out of the zone contact rate, going
his OC, if you will. Don't call it that.
His OC percent going from 51.2% to 56.4%. So maybe he's making the wrong choice at what pitches to swing at. They're outside of the zone, but also maybe he's being more selective at which pitches he wants to chase after outside of the zone. His Z contact, or ZC percent, as Vinnie wants me to say, the contact that he's making on pitches in the zone went from 83.3% to 85.1%. Again, the numbers so far have gotten better from 2019 to 2020 to 2022. But here's the one thing. Hard hit percentage, 39.9% in 2019, down over the past 3 years to 38.1%. And the barrel percentage, 10.8 for Yoan Moncada in 2019, 8.5 over the past 3 seasons. And if you just look at strictly last year, if you look strictly at just his hard hit percentage, last year it was 30.5%. So in 2019, it was at 39.9. This year was at 30.5%. So I just don't think he's, people want to complain about exit velocity and some of these advanced analytics. I think you could just look at Yoan Moncada. He's just not hitting the ball as hard as he used to. You got into some of the shift numbers, and we'll get to that in a bit. But you look at his swing decisions, he's gotten better at what pitches to swing at. So it's kind of shocking to see that this player has taken a step back from where he was in 2019.
Early this year in 2022, he started looking like the 2018 Yoan Moncada, the guy that led the league in strikeouts and led the league in called third strikeouts too, because he thought he knew the strike zone, but the umps were giving him the punch out. And some
he
of those
being aggressive enough.
Exactly. And some of those were, the umps were just expanding their zones a lot. Jose Abreu famously told him, hey, man, you got to be more aggressive. You have to swing at these balls and have to put some punishment in. In 2019, you saw the punishment he put on those balls. It was at 39% of hard hit contact and then 10% of barreled up balls. This year, it's at 8.4. You could tell that is a 2% drop in the full year. That's huge. Or for over 3 seasons, that's a huge drop from 2019. We saw him ascending. Now he's gone back down to this. So I saw earlier this year where he was kind of trying to be too selective and letting called thirds go past him all the time. He worked on that a little bit better, and he got and saw the ball a little bit more. It seems like he's swinging at less balls outside, but he's getting weaker contact in those balls. So he's not getting his pitch and then punishing them as much as he did back in the day. So it could be just a thing where it's a cycle. You do something bad, and then the ball keeps on rolling down the hill, and you can't get out of that vicious cycle. That's why an offseason should clear his mind, know that it doesn't matter what he did in 2022 because there's nothing he can do about it. Fresh start in 2023, and know that, hey, the shift is being gone. I hit balls like I did last year. Those are hits instead of outs. And me, I'm not a 211 hitter. I'm much up there by 270, 280 at minimum, not 211. And the power in the slugging in 300s, no, that's garbage. He knows he's not that guy.
From 2018 to 2019, the offseason was so important for Yoan Moncada and Tim Anderson. And what happened in 2019? Yoan Moncada had the year that got him that contract extension. Tim Anderson won a batting title.
Yep.
That mindset that they worked on, that approach that they worked on in the offseason between those 2 years is what those two guys both need to get back to. Obviously, the league's going to adjust, right? And we've seen the league adjust to Yoan especially, but to Tim to a lesser degree as well. Obviously, this year was the worst season for TA since 2018, even though he started the All-Star game.
Awesome.
If those two guys can go back to being those guys that they were in 2019, not just because of the results that they got in 2019, but because of the work that they put on leading up to 2019, Then you're talking about two really dangerous hitters. And certainly it applies to Moncada because you're right. Yoan Moncada came up from the minor leagues where he was the number one prospect in baseball at one point with a reputation of being a master of the strike zone. And he showed that. In 2018, you'll remember, or I'm sorry, in 2017, you'll remember all the walks that he was able to draw in his first real taste of major league action. And then 2018, his first full season in the bigs, he thought he knew the strike zone, and boy, he didn't because he was in his own head about it, and he was striking out constantly. That is the kind of hitter that we saw again for a large portion of this season. So what he needs to do is go back and remember what he did after 2018, and he can work on those same fixes. I think that would make him much more of the same hitter he was before, because when those guys are attacking pitchers, they're playing offense. They're right. Pushing it. They're the guys that are putting the pitchers on their back heels rather than them standing on their back heels. Obviously, TA is never on his heels, but Moncada certainly is a guy who's kind of waiting for the pitcher to come to him. Be the guy that goes after the pitcher, and you're going to have a lot of success.
But also, you see the team's walk rate crater this year. So were they being too aggressive? Like it's so.
But remember, Sean, it's like I was talking about yesterday. It's not every approach is for every. You can't have a blanket approach for the team, and every single guy. Hardly anybody on that team, with maybe the exception of Luis Robert, is going to have success doing the Tim Anderson thing. Tim Anderson's going to have a ton of success doing it. So let Tim Anderson do that. Don't get mad when TA is swinging at pitches, a little bit outside the strike zone, because TA can hit those pitches to right field and have one of the highest batting averages in the league. So you're right. They need more guys who take more walks. You know what I mean? Who have success in drawing more walks. I think about Yasmani Grandal as a great example of that kind of player. Jose Abreu became that kind of player this year as well. Yoan Moncada can be that kind of player. I think he's a hell of a lot more dangerous when he's not.
But you look at 2019, walk rate 7.2%, 2022 7.4%. So it seems like he was walking at the same rate. Like it seemed like he was being fairly aggressive, which was my thing.
Which worked for him in 2019. It worked for him.
But it didn't work in 2022. Around. What I'm saying, like I don't think I saw less aggression.
Yeah, but those balls were hit harder in 2019. This year, those balls are turned into easy outs.
What my thing is, and we'll get to, but like we talk about the COVID that he went through, we talk about the injuries. Like, I just wonder if the reason why he's hitting the ball less hard is because he's just
less powerful.
He's less of an athlete than he was in 2019. Like that's the point I'm trying to get to here. And Tom Johnson and Alred saying none of the Sox hit the ball hard this year, and it's a career worst for all of our position players. At least for hitting the ball hard, that's just not true. They're better than they were in 2021. So that's just a false narrative. Let's go to another one here. Another pre versus post extension one. This kind of goes into the walk rate here and his batted ball profile. So in 2019, again on the left, 2020 to 2022 on the right, ground ball rate went down from 42% to 41%.
This is like being in a presidential cabinet meeting with all of these abbreviations.
Well, this is
more acronyms on this screen than I can possibly dream of.
And this is what Joe Madden. Green Bay. This is what Joe Madden doesn't want. Ground ball percent, though.
Joe Madden would chuck this TV through the wall.
Yes, he would. He would shoot it like Elvis. Ground ball rate went down about 1% for Yoan Moncada. Fly ball rate has stayed about the same. So I wouldn't say that he's like hitting the ball on the ground more. He isn't hitting the ball in the air more. But the one thing that just has happened, like his home run to fly ball rate has cratered significantly, going from 20% to about 11% there. And you can see BABIP, which is batting average on balls in play. In 2019, highest in baseball at 406.
And TA was right there with him.
And TA is right there with him. And then in 2020 to 2022, 313. A lot of with BABIP is batted ball luck and also how hard you're hitting the ball. Because even if they're shifting on you, if you're hitting the ball as hard as you can, it's just not going to be able to reach fielders' gloves as much. So I think that's part of the way you could see the decline happen there. Walk rate, as we said, he's being more selective. He's able to get on base more. That's increased by about 4% there. And the called strike plus whiff percent, like he's swinging and missing less, and he's taking less called strikes. That's down about 2%. So you've seen that he's been able to make more quality contact or make contact more consistently, and I think he's been able to understand where the strike zone is. So for a player that's been able to show that his contact really hasn't gotten worse, he just had the best contact rate in his career, like I'm concerned that the power has been zapped from Yoan Moncada, and maybe that 2019 ball was huge for Yoan Moncada's career. Like I'm wondering like what the Sox are dealing with here, and maybe they made that bad signing or maybe they made that extension at the wrong time.
I think the signing was great because you're paying for what he is going to be instead of what he has done. And no one can say they saw this.
As in like bad luck.
Okay,
no one could see when they made that extension before spring training. I thought it was great.
It was an awesome deal. And I just think I can't believe a 26, 27-year-old man is zapped of his power from that year. And I know the ball was different, but I've seen Yoan Moncada go to the deck a couple times this year where it's like, okay, there's the old guy. And the 5-hit game in Oakland and the 5-hit game in Detroit, those are games where like, okay, here we go, Yoan Moncada. Unfortunately for Yoan, when he hit that 5-hit game in Detroit, immediately the next game in Tampa Bay goes out, back on the IL. So, like, he couldn't really get anything going until, as Alex Rude pointed out, September, and then he ran to the buzzsaw of the San Diego Padres at the time. But I think the guy is just a superstar waiting to happen. I know the results this year do not seem like it, and I'll go on my top 5 third baseman thing. He is that, and that's why I gave him an F this year, because he fell way short of that. Even though the defense was great, the offense cratered, and him being as bad as he was on offense made the White Sox as bad as they were on offense. Him and Yasmani, specifically, those two guys. And so them coming back in 2023 being just regular. In 2021, Yoan Moncada makes his team go from average 81 and 81 to competing for the playoffs next year because he's just that good. He matters that much to this White Sox because he'll be on the team next year. You can't say that about every single player on the White Sox roster, that they'll guaranteed be on the team next year. So Yoan Moncada, whatever he needs to do, get some more guidance from Jose Abreu. Find a new hitting coach. Don't listen to Frank Menechino. Find another guy that's going to be helping you to progress. And Alex Rude says that's, the Todd Steverson difference from the Frank Menechino thing. I can't go there too much because of the COVID and such, but I think whatever he needs to do in this offseason to get himself right mentally, physically, he can do. And that I hear your thing, and I hear it, and it makes sense that his power might be just zapped out of him, but I can't believe that this young man has no more power because of COVID, because of various injuries. I don't think that. I can't go there yet.
I go back to the conversation we had before the season started, which was maybe Yoan Moncada is the 6th best hitter on this team. A, that should say a lot about the other guys on the team. B, what if that's okay if Yoan Moncada is the 6th best hitter on the team? Because then if 2021 Moncada is what you get going forward, and that's the 6th best hitter on your team, okay.
Really
sign up for that, right?
Right.
And
so
I think
his offensive grade would probably need to get to like a C to C plus, though, right?
What I was about to say was that no, you're fine. What I was about to say plays into that, which was if anything that's on top of 2021 Moncada is gravy,
yes,
and is like, oh my God, we're getting this from the 6th best hitter on the team. He showed you though that going drastically below 2021 Moncada drags down the team, like Herb just said, because Moncada and Grandal for the majority of the season were black holes in the middle of the lineup. And you can't have that from guys who you expect to be 2 of the 6 best hitters on your team. What you can have is them being fine and regular or normal to what Herb was just saying. Moncada doesn't have to go out and hit 30 home runs.
Yeah.
He does have to reach base a lot, and he does have to, be a reliable hitter. He was not that guy this year, and you saw the effect that it had on this lineup, especially when everybody else in that lineup, with a very few exceptions, were having similar struggles.
And he's at the top of the lineup, so he cannot be below below 300 on base this year. The year before, I think he was at either 38% or 43% time on base. That is a top of the order hitter. The guy that showed up this year was costing the White Sox runs because he wasn't on base at all.
Well, career on base percentage before this year, 346. This year, 273.
Yeah, there it is. That's the story right there.
Makes no sense. Alex also said I was missing line drive percentage, which has dropped about 6% there.
That's LD.
So that's LD percent.
Larry David.
That's dropped about 6% too. So I mean, at least if you're adding power on that line drive, would be that as well. And 2 line drives would help with trying to beat the shift. And Herb, you've mentioned this as well. So let's just go into 2019. Well, actually, first, Steven, let's go into the shift percentage first, if we could see that. So this is in 2019. This is Yoan Moncada versus the shift. So as a left-handed hitter, he faced the shift 52.9% of the time. The average left-hander faced the shift about 41.9%. So he faced it about 11% more than the average MLB hitter. Really wasn't getting shifted a ton as a right-handed hitter. But let's then go to the 2022 numbers for Yoan Moncada. Again, about 11% difference between where he was getting shifted compared to the league average. This year in 2022, as a left-handed hitter, he was getting shifted 78.3% of the time. The average shift was 55% of the time. Wow. And his weighted on base percentage, 233 going up against the shift. And when he was not going up against the shift, the 21% of the times that he didn't, the 73 plate appearances he didn't go up against the shift, 334 weighted on base average. So
not good.
It's not good, but it's 100 points better. So I wonder, is the shift going to be huge for Yoan Moncada? Is that part of it as well? Is that ways that we can see him possibly getting on base more?
You would think.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point of why they're doing it, right? I mean, you would expect those numbers to go up for pretty much every hitter in baseball, because the reason that they're employing this rule is because they want to see more guys on base. They want to see more action on the base paths. Guess what? There's going to be a lot of hits that weren't falling last year. You're going to see more guys on base. You're going to see more runs. It's going to be a big deal, I think, just because think of the pitchers that aren't going to be able to get out of innings by getting that guy to ground out to right field. You know what I mean? Yasmani Grandal, every time he came up to bat, was out into to the guy playing shallow right field. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a base hit every time next year. Most times, Herb, you know the speed kind of situation.
Yeah. I mean, he's gonna.
Yeah, Yaz will get more hits.
Barely.
Yaz will get more singles. Yaz will get thrown out fewer times to right field than you will.
And he's a left-handed too, so he's got a advantage. I mean, I know he's a switch hitter, so he got a advantage on me. But yeah, these are gonna open up holes for Yasmani Grandal and Yoan Moncada to get a better average, to get a higher on base percentage, and it's gonna help the White Sox immensely. Almost 80% of the time he's batting left-handed, he's getting shifted against. And I know people are like, well, be like Gavin Sheets, hit the ball the other way. Great job by Gavin Sheets to doing that. He's young in his career, though. He can do that. He needs to stay on the Major League roster any way he can. So he adjusted to that and made sure he let that ball get deep and hit it to the other side of the field. Yoan and Yasmani Grandal are established veterans. You know how hard it is to change what you do and how you swing, especially when you have a switch hitting swing where, you've been trying to pull the ball as a left-hander for most of your life, and then you're telling you, hey, how about you hit the ball to right field? We saw it at the end of the year, Yoan trying to bunt for hits over there, and that was probably somebody trying to tell him, there's hits over there if you can, but he probably didn't feel comfortable putting the bat to ball and tried to hit the ball that way because it would just change up his swing immensely, and he wasn't comfortable with that. Well, next year, he won't have to do that, and I see a lot of hits going through there for Yoan Moncada. But I still would see some people, for Yasmani Grandal, they would start the guy, right at second base, on the left side of second base, the shortstop, and let that guy just run over to right field. So he'll still get Yasmani Grandal out no matter what.
My contacts
Wow, that's another challenge right there.
That is
Herb's going to be running in the alley again.
Oh, Jesus
wow.
Christ.
All this talk about the shift going away is making Sean cry.
So my contact is attacking me right now. So let's wrap this episode up. I got one final graphic for you, then we'll get out of here. Hello, Emiliano, and what's up, Marcos, as well in the chat. And
hello,
hey,
amigos.
HL. Herb Lawrence is in the chat. HL is in the chat.
Always.
So shout out to Herb. All right, this is the final graph we got. This is 2019 versus 2022. This is just these two seasons. So this is rather pre-extension versus post-extension, just 2019 versus 2022. But weighted runs created plus as a left-handed hitter, Moncada in 2019 was at 147. League average is 100. He was down to 64 in 2022. Weighted runs created plus as a right-handed hitter, league average is 100. In 2019, he was 121. In 2022, he was 122. So basically about the same. Yep. Pull percentage as a left-handed hitter, 38.3% in 2019, 38.8% in 2020. So about the same. He was just hitting more into the shift, as we showed you. The percentage of he was getting shift jumped about 20% from 2019 to 2020. Then hard hit percentage as a left-hander from 44.5% to 32.1%. That's a dip in about 12% there. And then pull as a right-handed hitter, 42.2% down to 27.7%. So you made the argument, maybe going to different fields. He has changed his swing a bit. He was going up more the middle than he ever had this year. So maybe he was finding something where, it was up the middle rather than pulling the ball. I would say that he shifted a little bit there, but then hard hit percentage as a right-hander, it was down as well, going from 28.6% to 24.6%. So that's the big thing that sticks out to me throughout all these numbers is the hard hit percentage just dropping basically about 12% as a left-hander and 4% as a right-hander over these past 3 years, and the line drive percentage dropping. My big concern is just that isn't that athlete that they signed him to be, which would be very unfortunate, but hopefully we see how good he is in the field. He could turn that around and have another, B+ season in him.
I just have faith that he's the guy that's 2019, 2021 than the guy that showed up in 18 and 22.
Maybe he'll be the anti-Giants. Odd year Moncada.
There you go. That'd be great. 2024 is going to be one hell of a year if that happens.
Well, 2023 would be the next good one.
Right.
No,
Well,
2024 would not be
Need
good.
to trade him right after.
real
right.
bad. And that was one thing too. Alex Rude said in 2021 he was worth 4 WAR as a third baseman, 5.1 in 2019. So if he can give 4+ this year, might be a great season for the White Sox. Let us know your grades for Yoan Moncada. Whether you could tweet at us at CHGO _White Sox. You could tweet at any of our personal accounts at Vinnie Duber, at Ecknerwall23, at Sean _W_Anderson. We will talk to you on Sunday. We got more grades for you coming then. We'll continue the fun and maybe we'll get more managerial news. But for Vinnie Duber, Herb Lawrence, I'm Sean Anderson. Thank you to Stephen Nicholas for producing the show, and shout out to everyone hanging out with us in the chat. We will talk to you on Sunday. Enjoy the weekend.